All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting in-depth review. Today I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of the new MCDM TTRPG Draw Steel. Now, a quick reminder, if you do enjoy this stuff, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super important. Now, let's talk about this. So, Draw Steel, as I said before, it's the new TTRPG from MCDM, which is Matt Colville's production company. If you were unaware during the whole OGL debacle, Colville mentioned that he had already started working on his own TTRPG, and this is the fruit of that labor. As I'm recording this, only the digital version is available for purchase. According to the website, the physical version should be shipping in mid-September, so this month. But it is brand spanking new, and there are a lot of really interesting the things in here that I'm excited to talk about. However, we need to talk about what's going on here. So this is going to be an in-depth review, and when I say in-depth, I mean in-depth. I'm going to go chapter by chapter, sometimes page by page. I'm going to talk about the things that I like, the things that I don't like, the things I think they did well, the things I think they need to do better. However, that takes a long time, normally over 2 hours, and not a whole lot of people want to sit around 2 hours just to figure out if they want to buy something, so I always start off these videos with a should you buy it? And I separate potential buyers into 3 different groups. The first group is a group that I call players. Players are people that are primarily, not exclusively, but primarily going to be sitting down at a table and playing a single player character as part of a group. The second group is a group that I call GMs. GMs are people that are primarily, not exclusively, but primarily going to be sitting down at a table and they're going to be running the game. Whether there's the dungeon master, GM, director, whatever you want to call it, they're the people that are designing encounters and running all the NPCs, all that fun stuff. And obviously they have different wants and needs than players do. The third group, which is often forgot about, is a group that I call Lorehounds. Lorehounds may never sit down at a table and play a game, but they're really interested in the lore, in the story, in the world that it happens in. And obviously they have very different wants and needs as the other 2 groups. So, should you buy this? Well, let's find out. The first group. Should players buy this book? So, get it out of the way right at the front. If you want to play Draw Steel, you need the book. Okay, so now that we're done with that, Draw Steel is a tactical. How do they explain it? Our game is heroic fantasy. Draw Steel describes itself as tactical and cinematic. And what that means to players is Draw Steel is crunchy. When I say crunchy, what I generally mean is it has rules. It has a decent, significant amount of rules. The crunchier something is, the more rules, the more nuance there is to the game. The less crunchy something is, the more things are up to interpretation, the more kind of story focused it is. Draw Steel is a crunchy game. It's not quite to the level of something like Pathfinder 2nd Edition or GURPS or anything like that, but it's going to be more complicated than like D&D 5th Edition. And it's that way on purpose. One of my favorite things I've ever seen Matt Colville do is I have a friend, her name is Dale. Dale has a really cool channel called Monarch's Factory on the YouTubes. And she's a former Geek and Sundry vlogger. She has been nice enough to play in one of my charity events. She also was a Power Ranger, in my Power Ranger mini campaign that I ran a few years ago. She's super awesome. Well, she also played in a 4th edition game with Matt Colville. And the reason Matt Colville is running a 4th edition game is that he really hated how much hate that 4th edition gets. Is it a perfect system? No. But Draw Steel is kind of a love letter to 4th edition and a few other games, with some upgrades, let's say. Anyone that's been watching this channel for a while knows 4th edition is my favorite version of D&D. I think it's absolutely the most fun you can have on a table until I did this. So why am I telling players this? Well, you need to understand what this game is going to be. And the idea of tactical and cinematic really describes it well, because that's what 4th edition was. It was tactical and cinematic. Speed is measured in squares. Everything is set up to be played on a grid. There are multiple pages where all they are diagrams of battle grids, where you're showing how this is how cover works, and this is how flanking works, and things like that. And this is how all the different shapes work when you're doing area attacks. This is a tactical game, and it's also cinematic. You don't have, just basic, oh, I go and I swing my sword. You have powers, you have abilities. Each class has their own kind of term for what it is. But they're not just, well, I swing my sword. They let you do really cool, amazing things. Even your kind of melee basic attack, they strongly encourage you to go, okay, what do you want your melee basic attack to be? There are going to be abilities and powers and things like that are going to let you just make a free attack. What do you want that to be? Describe it. Tell us how cool it is. That's what Draw Steel is built around. It is tactical and it is cinematic. When you're doing things, they're going to feel big. They're going to feel like you're on a 60-foot screen with 100 people in the audience and sound blaring through these speakers and lens flare everywhere. You get a lens flare and you get a lens flare. That's what it feels like. It's cinematic and it's tactical. And so for players that want a game that you feel powerful in, and I'm not talking about, oh, you are so overpowered and it's just a massive power. It's not. The game is very challenging as well, but if you compare a Draw Steel level 1 character to a D&D 5th edition level 1 character, there's no comparison. The Draw Steel character feels more powerful. The other thing that's interesting about Draw Steel is you always hit. There are no rolls to hit. There are rolls for effect, effectively. Basically, anytime you use one of your abilities, something is going to happen. You are going to do some damage. Something is going to happen. You roll the die to see how much cooler it gets. And because of that, even though combat is tactical, combat's also pretty quick. Nobody misses. Like, there are no times where you just waste your turn. You are always doing something. And because of that, at least according to the book here, combat very rarely goes for more than 3 rounds. So it is kind of fast-paced when you compare it to something like, especially if you compare it to something where you're getting lots of different attacks, and there's a possibility of you missing and just wasting your turn and things like that. This is going to feel a little bit quicker than that. It is, again, very tactical, so it does hyper encourage you to pay attention during combat when it's not your turn, because the more you understand, the better you're going to be able to do. And it's also remarkably customizable. And I'm not talking about customizable in the way of, oh, well, to do anything, you have to do all these different feat trees and do all these things. No. Even something as simple as your ancestry. You have one ability that is baked into the ancestry, and then you get a few points that you can pick from an a la carte menu to flesh out the rest of your version of this ancestry. So, good example, one of the ancestries is Dragon Knight. Yeah! Doesn't that sound awesome? It's not like Dragon Person. No, it's Dragon Knight, bitch! It's a cool name. And so for the Dragon Knight Ancestry, your base ability is called Worm Plate. You get some damage immunity to a particular damage type. So very similar to how like Dragonborn are in D&D. They get some resistance. Immunity in this is not you don't take any damage. You have a certain number of immunity. So if you have immunity 5 or something, that means if you take 5 fire damage, or like 7 fire damage, and you have immunity 5, well, you're immune to 5 of that damage. So that's every single Dragon Knight. They have that ability. But then you get 3 ancestry points to spend on things like Dragon Breath, which costs 2 points, which gives you your kind of typical Dragon Breath thing. But you can also choose Wings for 2 points, and you can be a flying Dragon Knight. Or you can have Draconian Pride, which basically allows you to like scare people and do damage with it at the same time. And then there's other stuff as well. Like there's a lot of really, really cool stuff. And that's just from the Dragon Knight. So it's not like, oh, I have this very complicated, if I take this feat and then I invest my points in this. No, you're just given an actual choice, and all of the choices are viable in some way, shape, or form, and they don't require you to make 7 other choices in order for this choice to actually be worth something. Yeah, if you're into stuff like that, and it goes on from there. Like your background is a combination of you kind of picking a bunch of different things and putting them together to create your own kind of custom thing. And again, none of it is reliant on, well, if you have to take this one and then you don't take this. And then the classes, again, you'll have things that are built into the class, and then you will also have a list of abilities that you get to choose. And the other thing, all the classes have a limited resource that you generate every single turn that you can use to power your different abilities and things like that. And so it, for lack of a better term, it's a very customizable, pseudo complicated, because if you're just reading the book, it looks very, very complicated. Once you actually build your character, it's really not. But it gives you a lot of choice. And there's nothing in the game that's effectively going to make it, well, if you didn't make this choice, then you just can't do that. Skills max out at a like +2 to your rolls, and there's other ways to get bonuses, but it means like, unlike something like D&D 3rd edition, where once you get past like maybe about level 3 or 4, anything that you haven't invested skill points in is basically pointless for you to try to attempt, because you will never be able to make the DCs, especially once you start getting to higher levels. Then it's literally impossible. You'd need to roll like a 27 on a D20 to make some of these checks at higher levels. That's not a thing in this. Skills and things like that makes it more likely you can do something. And using their perk system, it allows you to kind of treat things in different ways, but no one's forbidden from doing something like we see in other, even in 5th edition. Once you get to higher levels, in order to challenge things like rogues and bards, you do have to have a decent number of like DC 20 and DC 25 checks. And that means if you have less than 5, you simply can't do it. Anyway. For players, like, there's a lot of really cool, interesting stuff in here that allows for making some really interesting characters, telling some really epic stories, and I think most importantly, having a lot of fun at the table. So, the PDF, which you can get right now, on the MCDM shop, it's listed as $39.99, or you can pre-order the physical version and I believe they don't have just a physical version. If you buy the physical version, it comes with the PDF, and that's $69.99. So basically, for $30 more, you get the physical and the physical and the digital. So, do I recommend this for two players? I do. $40 for a PDF is a little bit steep in my book. Most of the kind of digital versions of Giga games that I see tend to be a little bit closer to the $30 to $35 range, but $40 is not outside the realm of reason. And this is, I believe, it's nearly 400, if not over 400 pages of really, really good stuff. So I think for $40, there is more than enough content in here to justify it. And I do think that the $70 physical digital combo, physical PDF combo, is a good idea too. Like, again, there is so much here, and again, this is a TTRPG that feels like it was written for me, and so it has a lot of the things that I like. There's heavy 4th edition feelings in here, but there's also a lot of other stuff in here that you can see. Again, 4th edition came out almost 20 years ago. It came out in 2008. So 20 years ago, TTRPGs were at a very different place. And so I wouldn't even call this like a modern version of 4th edition. It takes some inspiration from 4th edition, but it's got a lot of other stuff in here as well that's just plain fun. So yeah, I definitely recommend this for players, either the physical or the digital. So moving on. The second group. Should GMs buy this book? Again, get it right out of the way. If you want to play Draw Steel, you need the book. All right. So for GMs, this book can be a little bit intimidating because, again, this is a grid-based TTRPG, which means if you like running Theater of the Mind, this is going to be harder for you to run. Doesn't mean that you can't run it, Theater of the Mind. It's just this is designed to be played on a grid, and so that's where it's going to be played the best. Again, 4th edition was designed to be played on a grid as well, and I have run Theater of the Mind 4th edition games. It's not impossible, it's just a little bit more difficult. And again, there's lots of crunch to this system. There's flanking rules and partial and 3/4 cover types of stuff, and all these different shapes and different ways that players can interact with the world, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming. That being said, there's a lot in here for GMs to love. One of my favorite parts about this, like, you have the system itself, which is a relatively robust system that works as far as I can tell. Again, I haven't played the damn game yet. Plan to, I just haven't yet. But there is a section at the back just labeled for the director. And the director is what they refer to the person in the GM role. So the director. And this section is really, really good campaign advice and just kind of generalized GMing advice. It's got little subsections for just about everything from house rules to building your own campaign, how to, like, for anyone who doesn't know, Matt Colville is a writer. One of the things that annoyed the hell out of me was he was having a conversation about D&D being referred to as a group storytelling game. And he goes, it's not a group storytelling game. Where's the section on the denouement? For anyone that doesn't know, denouement is a literary term that basically refers to the end of the book. The only people that use denouement are authors and writing students, like writing majors. They're the only people in the world that actually use that word. Fun fact, it's spelled denouement. And it's super, super fun if you have writing friends to just pronounce it denouement and don't bat an eye. Just go, oh yeah. And then the denouement was really, really interesting because you'll just watch their heads go, it's not, it's denouement, it's denouement, it's French. It's not denouement. That's not how you say the word. It's not how you say the word. And so he is a little bit up his own ass about, writing in general. And he, the whole argument for there is like, well, there's nothing in this, there's nothing in this book that forces you to follow any sort of writing structure. It doesn't talk about the various act structures that are used in most modern writing. It doesn't talk about the various parts of a story or anything like that. So how could this be a group storytelling game if it doesn't force you to tell stories the right way? That being said, because he's a writer, a lot of the tips in here are just really good storytelling tips. Like it's not that he's a bad writer or anything like that. He's arrogant, but he knows what he's talking about. And so this entire section on For the Director is such great world building advice, adventure building advice. There's a whole section on villains, and back when I was an actor, I played almost exclusively villains. I was 6'4" in I think I was 6'2" when I was in high school, and I'd been shaving since just before freshman year. So I was this big, and I was overweight too. So I was this really big, kind of wide dude with a super deep voice. I just played bad guys constantly. I played Javert, I played Bernardo, I played Judd in Oklahoma. I played played a really, really dark character in college where the show's called Dead Man Walking, and it's based on a book which was eventually turned into a movie, and I played one of the murderers slashed. In addition to murdering, they did other things that I won't go into details here because YouTube. But so I got to play that character too, only for like a 5 minutes scene, but it not a fun thing. So anyway, I play villains a lot. I understand villains. I like a well-written villain, someone that you can really hate and want to stop. And so there's an entire section talking about how to make villains that your players want to hate. And the idea that villains are not their motivation is, well, I do bad things. That's not how human beings work. Think of the most monstrous person that you've ever heard of. They weren't doing it because I do bad things. They were doing it because of a lot of different reasons. Generally, because they put themselves and their own feelings and needs ahead of literally everybody else. And when those wants and needs get bad, they do super bad things. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really, really good stuff in here. And again, even if you're an established dungeon master, there's a lot of good stuff that you can get from this that's not specifically targeted towards Draw Steel. There's also a lot of really good stuff about how to run Draw Steel. The other thing that's really good for DMs in general, or directors in this, is throughout the book they have examples and basically sample little write-ups of actual pretend games, so you can actually see, oh, this is what the players say, and then this is what the director says. And those are really, really useful, because as much as explaining things in prose is fine, giving examples is significantly more effective for retention point of view. And when all you have is text, the easiest thing you can do is basically put, in the training world, we call them role plays. But you actually give examples of this is what an actual scene might look like. And there's tons of those in here as well. So as daunting as this may look at first read through, it's a lot less complicated than it looks, and the game runs remarkably smoothly. Like combat design, as far as I can tell, again, I haven't actually played this yet. But everyone that everyone in the subreddit keeps talking about how combat design significantly easier and better. The formulas and things that they give you for creating balanced combat and kick counters are significantly more accurate than things like D&D 5th edition, for example, where the little or even in Daggerheart, the equation that they give you for making quote unquote balanced combat are nice guidelines, but they're not great. Daggerheart is better than 5th edition. 5th edition is real bad. And challenge rating is almost useless. This one, it's a little bit closer because, again, combat tends to be relatively quick. You don't have quite as much kind of randomness changing what should be a really simple encounter into a near-death experience, or taking a really, really hard encounter and trivializing it because they got one or two really good rolls. It doesn't happen quite as much in here, and so things work a little bit better. The world that you run in, they have a decent amount of lore and things that you can pull from, which is useful. Yeah, like I said, this is a game that is tactical and cinematic. That's how they describe it, and that's what it's going to be like playing it. So as the director, as they call it here, you should expect that when things are happening, whether it is a combat encounter, a system that they call negotiations, which are basically your role-play encounters, or whatever, it should feel cinematic, and they give you the tools in here to make it cinematic and tactical. But that's what you should go into this. You're not making a little art film. You are making a big blockbuster summer release, and there's going to be explosions and big monsters and all this really, really cool stuff that just makes you like eat the popcorn and drink and just be blown away by everything. That's what this game is designed to do. And it doesn't mean that you can't tell personal stories in it or anything like that, but it gives you the tool to make things epic, make things feel really, really cool. And it's not just for the players. Yeah, the players get to do really cool shit, but the DM or the director gets to do it too. So yeah. So do I recommend this to GMs? Yeah, I do. Like I said, the for the director section is phenomenal. Just advice in general. If this is not your kind of game, the rest of the stuff in here is good, but it's very geared towards running this game. Who would have thought? So there have been TTRPGs where I go, oh yeah, you should get this even if you're never going to run it because there's so much good advice in here. And there is, but there's not a ton of it. And again, for $70 for the physical and PDF, if you don't think you're going to run this game, that might be a little bit steep. I think the $40 PDF is a great deal, and that's worth the for the director section and all the other stuff that you can take from this. But if this is not your kind of game, maybe don't get the physical version of it. So, yeah, moving on. The third group. Should Lorehounds get this book? This is interesting, let's say. So, generally, when I'm trying to figure out if I want to recommend something to Lorehounds, um, I'm basically just looking how much lore is in this book, how much fluff, how much non-mechanical stuff is in this book, and there's a decent amount. Like a good example for uh, the Devil Ancestry, um, which I think is the first ancestry in the book, because it's alphabetical. And DE comes before DR. The first, effectively, page and a half is all lore. And most of these ancestries take up 2 pages. So on the first page, you have half the page vertically is a really, really well done bit of art showing off a female and a male devil. And then the other half of that page is all lore. And then the first half of the second page is more lore. And then the second half of the second page is where you actually get into mechanics. So, and this is true of every single ancestry. When you get to backgrounds are very kind of generic because you kind of build your own. So there's not quite as much lore in here. But then we get to the classes. And again, once you get to the actual classes, there's a little like paragraph, maybe paragraph and a half that talks about it. And then you get directly into the mechanics, because again, this is a very technical game, and so every single ability has some flavor text on it, but most of this section is mechanics because it needs to be, and it goes that way pretty often. Like you get to the kits, which is their version of weapons. They have a small paragraph that kind of explains how the kit's supposed to work and a little bit of artwork, and then nothing but mechanics. And then you have an entire section that's just this is how you play the game, and you really don't get back into things with lore until you get almost at the very end. It's chapter 14, where it says Gods and Religion, and this is mostly a lore thing, but it's a lore thing that's designed to be useful for players, because there are 2 different classes that require you to pledge yourself to either a deity or a saint, and so yeah, as far as like getting a lot of lore out of this, out of the like 400 pages ish that this book is, if there are 50 pages that are lore, I would be surprised. Again, this is a complicated game, and so because of that, a lot of its runtime effectively needs to be explaining how the game works. And there is some really, really cool stuff, and it's written very, very well, but it is a little bit lore light, because if they put like as much lore as like an Essence 20 book, this book would be like 800 pages long and it would never get published. So do I recommend this for Lorehounds? Maybe. If you're a Lorehound that might someday play the game, probably pick it up. If you are just going to read this, the artwork in here is astounding. It is really, really good. When there is lore, it's very interesting. It's just, there's so much mechanics that I have a hard time recommending this one to Lorehounds unless you happen to be a really, really big fan of Matt Colville and his storytelling style in general. So the physical version, $70. I can't recommend this to Lorehounds for $70. There's just not enough lore in here. The $40 for the PDF. Again, if you really get into the art, again, which is amazing, and are fine with large swaths of the book having very little to no lore in it, I could see justifying $40 for a PDF. I would. I'm going to go on the assumption that now that he actually has the rules laid out, further books are probably going to have more lore in them. And it's going to be useful to know the lore set out in here when those further books come out. But yeah, there's just not a ton of lore in here. So the recommendation for Lorehounds is effectively maybe the PDF, but your mileage will vary. Moving on. So, quick recommendation recap. For players, this is a definite get it. This game is super, super cool. There's tons and tons of stuff to create tons and tons and tons of characters and have a ton of fun playing it. For GMs, this is another yes recommendation with a caveat. If you are never going to actually run this game, I might shy away from the $70 physical and PDF bundle, because while there is some really, really great stuff in here for GMs or directors as they're called in here, there's not enough of it, in my opinion, to justify $70 when there's already a $40 option. But there's a lot of really, really good stuff in here that you can use. So the $40 I think is worth it for most GMs, unless this is definitely not your style of game. And then for Lorehounds, it's a mostly no. Definitely not the physical version, because $70 is just too much for the small amount of lore that's in here, or the small percentage of lore that's in here. However, if you're a big fan of Colville, or you just really like kind of the art style or just kind of the themes of it, I could possibly see recommending the PDF version, because $40, you can probably get $40 worth of entertainment out of this just reading the lore, if you really kind of absorb all of the lore that's in here. So yeah, for those of you that are just here for the recommendation, thank you so much for tuning in the comments down below. What do you think is the most cinematic thing you've ever either been a part of in a TTRPG, or you have seen in a TTRPG? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, it's time for us to start this in-depth review. Now, as a quick reminder, this is an in-depth review. And when I say in-depth, I mean in-depth. I am going to go chapter by chapter, sometimes page by page. I'm going to talk about the things that I like, the things that I don't like, the things that I think they did well, the things I think they need to do better. And that takes a long time. Most of these are close to 2 hours. Some of them get to 3 hours. There are 15 chapters in this book. This is going to be a ride. Due to the fact that I don't know too many people that can just sit down and watch me drone on for 3 hours, I will put timestamps in here. Use the timestamps. I know YouTube would prefer me to go, no, watch it all the time. Watch it 7 times in a row. That's good. But I understand that's just not how things work. So use the timestamps. Jump around to the things that are most interesting to you. Come back later for the rest. With that being said, it's time for us to jump into this in-depth review. The first section, the introduction. Every single TTRPG book has this. This one is more interesting than most, I'm going to say. So on the first page of the introduction, and this does do something that annoys the hell out of me. So in every single chapter, at the beginning of the chapter, you will have full page art and then black page with white text on it. Okay, that's good. Dark mode. But the very next page is this kind of like off-white parchment colored with black text on it, and that's how it is for the rest of the chapter. And that kind of annoys me because I'd be fine if the first page of every single chapter was just like an introduction page, but they'll actually put mechanics and stuff like that on that first page, and then you jump to the next page and it's a completely different color scheme and everything like that, and it becomes very, very jarring from an organizational standpoint. You feel like the first page should be something completely different, and it's not. The exact same stuff is on the rest of every single page. It's just in a completely different look. So that in and of itself, and that's just a layout problem that I have. So that in and of itself is annoying. But first page is titled Introduction. And then the first subheading, what is this game? This is a game about fighting monsters, about larger-than-life, extraordinary heroes plunging into battle against terrifying, monstrous enemies. And then it goes on. But one of the things it talks about is, like, a good example. You can fight monsters in a dungeon, but the game is not about dungeons. Lots of games focus on that gameplay and do it really well, like Shadow Dark. And there's a hyperlink that if you click on it, it will take you to thearcanelibrary.com specifically to buy the Shadow Dark RPG hardcover book in PDF. As we go further, it talks about other things. You can fight monsters in the wilderness, even run a whole campaign in the wilderness. But this game is not about the wilderness. We love games that focus on that fantasy, like Forbidden Lands. And if you click on that, it takes you to freeleaguepublishing.com and their Forbidden Lands section, where you can pick up Forbidden Lands, which is a more kind of wilderness-based game. You can run adventures with horror themes, but this is not a horror role-playing game like Call of Cthulhu Link. Your sessions can and will feature comedy, but this isn't a comedy RPG like Paranoia Link. Drawsteel is definitely a game about creating amazing stories in which the heroes fight monsters and villains using strategy and tactics. Drawsteel has a lot of other tools, but fighting monsters is sort of a non-negotiable. If you're looking for a game featuring extraordinary heroes overcoming dynamic villains without the focus on tactical combat, maybe check out Daggerheart. Link directly to daggerheart.com. I have never seen a TTRPG that the first thing that they do is advertise their quote-unquote competitors. And this is, again, a thing that I think a lot of people don't quite realize or understand about kind of business in general, is simply because you are in the same kind of business area does not mean that you're actually in competition with someone else. And this is a perfect example of that. From a marketing standpoint, this is a brilliant idea, because what it's doing is it's telling you exactly what it does, and it's showing you the niche that it's designed to fit in. And that's a really, really important part about building your business, is finding the place where your business fits and then solidifying yourself in that place. And so in this first section, they're literally just going, hey, this is what this game is about. This is what you're going to do. If you want games that do other things, here are some of the ones that we like. And the reason that this isn't like the dumbest thing that's ever happened, you're sending people to your competitors, is because these are not competitors. Like Drawsteel and Daggerheart are not competitors. And the reason why is, if I want to play Daggerheart, it's because I want to be able to tell a story that Daggerheart is designed to tell. Drawsteel isn't designed to tell stories like that. It's the same thing that I talked about when we were talking about Critical Role choosing D&D for Campaign 4 instead of Daggerheart. Daggerheart's not designed to tell stories, the same kind of stories that D&D 5th edition is designed to tell. And Campaign 4, or just the Critical Role campaigns, are designed to tell D&D-like stories. So, in that same vein, Draw Steel is not meant to tell stories like Daggerheart, despite the fact that they both launched within a few months of each other. They're not competitors because the kind of gameplay you get in Daggerheart is completely different than the gameplay you're going to get in Draw Steel. The stories you're going to the stories you're going to tell are going to be different. The feeling of the game is going to be different. It's going to scratch a different itch. It targets a different demographic. So while yes, they're both TTRPGs, they are not in direct competition with each other because they're not targeting the same kind of people or trying to give you the same kind of experience. It's kind of like a comparison between a fast food restaurant and a Michelin star restaurant. They're not in competition with each other. Like McDonald's does not compete with Gordon Ramsay's steakhouse. It's just not. They're designed for completely different experiences. And the same people may visit both restaurants. That doesn't mean that those two restaurants are in competition with each other. They're not. And the same thing is true about here. And I just love the fact that I don't know if this is Colville's idea or somebody else on the design team, but this is such a brilliant way to really define where this game is going to fit in the marketplace. There are a lot of people that really like kind of hyper tactical, very crunchy TTRPGs. And by giving specific examples of, hey, you can do this, but this is someone that does that particular thing better than us. It very, very quickly, especially if you're familiar with any of these games, it very, very quickly kind of defines exactly what it is by showing you all the things that it's not. Again, from a marketing standpoint, this is such a brilliant thing. It blew my mind the first time I read it. Yeah, that is the first half of the first page of the introduction. There's more. Then it gets into more specifics, like what does it mean by tactical? And they go into that. You know, what does it mean by heroic? What does it mean by cinematic? What does it mean by fantasy? Then it has a really cool thing that I think other TTRPGs really should start doing. There is a section called If You're Coming from D20 Fantasy. It doesn't specifically say D&D. That's D&D. And a whole plethora of other TTRPGs that are either based on D&D or mimic D&D. Yeah. So they have an entire section that just talks about, hey, these are things that are going to feel different. So anyone that's coming from the largest TTRPG in the world and the most successful TTRPG in the world has a quick guide of, oh, this is how things are going to feel different to me. That's a really brilliant way to go about doing something like this. Again, they're not competing with D&D or other D20 type games. They're their own thing. The game that they're technically competing with is 4th edition, which hasn't been in print for over a decade. So having this little kind of conversion guide is really, really useful. So you can kind of look at it and go, oh, okay. And again, it means that you are not only aiming this book towards brand new players, which is something that I think a lot of TTRPG books tend to do, is they pretend that every single person that picks up their TTRPG, it is the first TTRPG that they've ever seen in their life. They exclusively target people outside of the market with how they set them up, which is why every single TTRPG, aside from this one, has right at the beginning, what is a TTRPG? What mean dice? Why roll clicky math rock? This one doesn't. It expects that you've played a TTRPG before, so much so that it has a kind of conversion guide for you if you've played the most popular TTRPGs in the world. And then immediately after that is the glossary index, which annoys the hell out of me because It's not in an easy place to find. 9 times out of 10, a lot of TTRPGs will have an index in the back. So if there's a particular word that you need to know, you go to the back of the book, you find it alphabetically, and then it tells you what page to go on. This is on page X. It starts on page X and goes to page XV. So technically it starts on page 10 and goes to 15, but it's funnier if I say X. So it's basically 10 pages into the front of the book is where the glossary is. And it's a weird thing to do, to have the glossary there. Now, again, I think the reason why is this is a very crunchy game. Again, the glossary itself is 5 pages. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. It's a crunchy game. And you guys have seen me rant about this before, the idea of putting character options before you explain how the game works. So I can kind of appreciate the idea of putting the glossary in there. However, this is just words with definitions. It doesn't actually teach you how to play the game. So I'm not quite going to give them, hey, congratulations, you actually put the rules for the game before the character creation options. So your players, so the people reading the book actually know what it is that they're looking at. So I'm not going to go as that far, but it is an interesting choice, let's say. And yeah, that's the end. Moving on. Chapter 1. The basics. Something I like about this. Before we get into character options, we do have a chapter that explains roughly how the game works. Now, it doesn't go into everything here. There are quite a few things that are not explained in this particular place that are explained in different places in the book. But it's nice for them to actually start with, by the way, this is how the game plays. With, again, how much crunch there is to the game. It's still useful, let's say. And there is a little section for the Lorehounds in here called Orden and the Times Escape, which is basically just a little bit of lore of the world that you kind of need to know to understand how a few of the mechanics work. So yeah, this is a very bare bones primer on how the game works. You're not going into character options completely blind. Another thing that I do like about this, they do take this from, technically 4th edition did it, 5th edition does it a lot more, is the idea of like tiers of play. They call them echelons here, where the first echelon is 1st to 3rd level, 2nd is 4th to 6th, 3rd is 7th to 9th, and 4th is just 10th level. And I kind of like that, where your lowest level includes the base level of your characters plus a couple extra, so that you don't feel like you're immediately, as soon as you get your first level, you're immediately graduating out of the baby game into the real Giga game. No, it starts out as the real game. And then I also like the idea that if you get to max level, you're in a completely different tier of adventure. You're in a completely different echelon. 10th level characters feel kind of broken because they are. You're in well, here, I'll read the description. The 4th echelon of play explores the stories of characters of 10th level and might even go beyond in future products. At this echelon, heroes are saving the entire timescape from threats such as liches, powerful dragons, and overlords like Ajax the Invincible, not Ajax the Cleaner. So yeah, your 10th level characters are what we used to refer to as epic level play, where things are just nonsense levels of everything. Like everything is dialed up to 11 once you hit the 10th level. And when we get to the characters section, or the classes section, the 10th level abilities of these classes is not just, oh, you get this singular ability. No, everything changes. You get new abilities. Your old abilities get changed in different ways. Like, it is a massive, massive upgrade. So going to 10th level really does feel special and important. And due to the fact that the game only consists of 10 levels as opposed to 20, I think there's a significantly better chance that if you play a long-term draw steel campaign, you're probably going to have a better chance of getting to max level. Whereas in D&D, the likelihood of you getting to level 20 is next to nothing. Like, it's just not something that happens almost at all. Because games fizzle out long before you get anywhere near to 20. Yeah, like I said, I like that stuff. So, yeah. Moving on. Chapter 2. Making a Hero. So, this is your kind of generic, we're going to lay out character creation. And the first two subheadings are your first session and then step-by-step hero making. So, useful thing to kind of understand how things are going to work. The other thing that's kind of interesting is they do start explaining some of the notation and things in here. One of my favorite sections, Part 7 of Making a Hero, is called Add Free Strikes. I'm just going to read exactly what they have here because it's really, really... I can't say it any better than they can. A free strike is a combat ability you can use when it's not your turn, representing the simplest and most basic weapon attack you can make. An enemy foolish enough to walk away from you in melee? Free strike! Every hero has a melee weapon free strike and a ranged weapon free strike. They're all the same, until modified by your kit or class. And it's up to you to decide what exactly your free strikes are. A thrown dagger, a punch. The design is intended to let you use your imagination. And it goes into a little bit more. But I love the idea that, hey, this is your melee basic attack, is what they used to call it in 4th edition and in earlier editions. This is just your standard kind of attack. They go as far as to go, hey, you're going to be getting these free strikes. You're going to be getting these kind of generic attacks. So make it yours. What is your free strike? You know, how do you describe your free strike? You get both a ranged one and a melee based one, and they can be whatever you want. Have it based off of your kit, have it based off of your class, have it based off of your nose, whatever you want, but make it yours. There's also a cool thing that they have in here called complications, which I'm a big fan of. It's reminiscent of Open Legends flaw system, which I really, really like. So yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of stuff in here that's really that crazy. It teaches you like the step-by-step process of creating a character and then leveling a character up. Moving on. Chapter 3. Ancestries. So, like all good TTRPGs, your character is made up of 3 parts. Your ancestry, your background, and your class. There will be a test. Every single TTRPG has something reminiscent of an ancestry, a race, whatever you want to call it now. And generally, like we go for Essence 20, their origins. Generally, it's going to kind of help define the physicality of your character. Sometimes it'll give you a few things that are kind of linked to your character. That's not how Ancestries work in Draw Steel. The fascinating thing about Ancestries is they're made up of a lot of different things. And when the Ancestries chapter, the first thing they do is they list the different ancestries. For those wondering, the ancestries that exist in the core version of Draw Steel are devils, dragon knights, dwarves, wood elves, high elves, Hakan, which are kind of giant, stone giant kind of things. Humans. Memenek. They are, well, here, I'll read that. Or originating on Axiom, the plane of uttermost law, Memenek are machine people made of metal, marble, glass, and other inorganic materials. They're robots. Orcs, Polder, halflings, Revenant, undead characters, and Time Raiders, spelljammers. Like, there's no other way to say it. It's spelljammers. It's what they are. But they're Time Raiders. Travelers of the Timescape, the Time Raiders, or Kuranzoi as they call themselves, have 4 arms and a single ocular sensor instead of a pair of eyes. Many have innate psionic abilities that make them capable warriors. So those are the ancestries in here, and they're all interesting. Like, they're all unique and cool, and yeah, and they just get cooler and cooler. So after you get to the ancestries, then we immediately start talking about a little bit of the lore. They go example names by ancestries, like devil names. Feminine devil names are Ampeth, Aryan, Cyric, Ilia, Oreth, or high elf names. I'm just, again, this is just beautiful. High elf names are poetic. They're an attempt to capture a fleeting, often contradictory impulse or emotion. They sometimes contain references to the natural world. They're never meant to be taken literally, and they're not an attempt to make a character feel heroic. Examples of high elf names: the anticipation of a sigh upon his lips, edges of a leaf torn by the wind, a rain of glass over a sea of dreams. These are their actual names. I love the fact that high elves are so far up their own asses that they can't even give themselves real names. Like, every flake of snow a memory is one of their... Like, it's brilliant. I love that. So they have example names of every single ancestry, which is very useful. And they kind of explain how to read an ancestry sheet. And then we get to the ancestries themselves. And like I said in my preview, one of the things that I absolutely adore about this book is nothing is packaged on its own. And what I mean by that is every choice that you make, you are given a bunch of choices and you have to narrow them down to the ones that you like the most. And that's what it is. So even your ancestry is not just going, oh, well, I want to be a devil character. Well, what kind of devil character do you want to be? The signature trait for devils is called Silver Tongue. Every single devil gets this signature trait, and every ancestry has a signature trait. So it gives you a skill, it gives you an edge, which is, it's not advantage, disadvantage, but it works in a similar vein where you can have edge, double edge, and I can't remember what the other negative version of it, and they can cancel each other out and stuff like that. So devils in general are very good at kind of manipulating people. But then you get the purchased devil traits, which are basically ways you can customize your flavor of devil. And they're things like Hellsight. Your eyes let you see through darkness, fog, and other obscuring effects. You don't take a bane. That's what it is. Edge and Bane. You don't take a bane on strikes made against creatures with concealment. Or Impressive Horns. Your cherished horns are larger than the average devil's and a hardened representation of your force of will. Whenever you make a saving throw, you succeed in a roll of 5 or higher. We'll deal with how that works later. So you get to really kind of customize your ancestry to give you exactly what you want. And I love that. And there's some things in there that are reminiscent of like the D&D versions of these races. And there's other stuff that's nothing like it. There's 2 different versions of tails that you can choose for devils. You can have a barbed tail, which allows you to just do extra damage. where you can have a prehensile tail, which prevents you from being flanked. Which is in a tactical game like this, flanking is a big deal. So that in and of itself is really, really cool and interesting. And each one of the ancestries has really cool stuff. Again, the Dragon Knight, I love the Dragon Knight. It's super cool. Dwarves, their signature trait is runic carving. And that in and of itself is really cool. You can carve runes and do really cool stuff with them. One of them lets you glow. The other rune that's built into the signature trait gives you the ability to communicate telepathically with another person. Like, it's super, super cool. And then that's just the signature trait. Their purchase traits have cool stuff in them as well. Wood elves are really good at hiding, so their trait is Wood Elf Glamour. High elves are really good at being pretty, so their High Elf Glamour, like the Wood Elf Glamour, makes it easier for you to hide and sneak. It's camouflage. The High Elf Glamour makes you sexy. It grants you an edge on presence test using the flirt or persuade skills. It just makes you hyper desirable. High elves are built around the idea that their racial signature trait is they're sexy to everybody. I love that. Hakan are big. Humans, their signature trait, instead of being get another feat, they can detect the supernatural. They kind of have like a built-in magic sense kind of thing that I think is an interesting take on humans. Because again, humans are generally considered kind of your default thing. And so generally when you're looking for something to make humans unique, it's generally something like, oh, you get a plus to all of your stats, or you get a single extra feat or something. Nope. These humans are like, yeah, you guys are like obsessed with ghosts. No one's been able to figure out why, but like the entire race of humans, it's probably because they're so boring that they have to come up with reasons to that the world is more complex than it already is. And so you guys are just really into ghost hunter shows. So I really love that. Then the Memenek, again, the robot people, they have some really cool stuff. Orcs are more similar to the orcs that you see in D&D. Their signature trait is relentless. I'll let you figure out what that does. Polder, they actually get a signature trait ability called Shadow Meld, which I won't go into details, but it's a cool little thing that they can do. And then Revenants, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, they're cool. They can definitely. And then Time Raiders. Time Raiders have more lore than any other class. They have a full page and a half of lore for them. And then their traits, like their signature trait is Psychic Scar. You have psychic immunity equal to your level. So, yeah, like I said, I just love the fact that you get to customize everything. You get to customize your ancestry, you get to customize your background, customize your class. So you can have 4 people playing the exact same class, ancestry, and background and still have 4 very different characters. Moving on. Chapter 4. Background. So this is another thing that I find interesting. So your background, very similar to how D&D is, it's a collection of skills. But the way that you create your backgrounds is very, very different. Basically, a background is a combination of 3 different things. You have your environment, the organization, and your upbringing. So, for example, environment can be things like nomad, rural, secluded, urban, wilderness. So literally the physical place that you are. Organization is how did your particular culture deal in that place. So you have things like bureaucratic, or communal. And then upbringing is a little bit more of like, who's your daddy and what does he do? So upbringings are things like academic, creative, labor, lawless, martial, or noble. And so what you do is you pick one thing from environment, one thing from organization, and then one thing from upbringing. And each one, like a good example, for the academic, by choosing academic, you get one skill from the lore skill group. And their skill groups, we'll talk about those a little later. Or nomadic, you would choose one skill from the exploration or interpersonal skill groups. And then, let's say, communal, you get one skill from the crafting or exploration skill groups. So if I was a nomadic, communal, academic, that's the background I made. I would have a skill from exploration or interpersonal, a skill from crafting or exploration, and then a skill from the lore group. And so again, it's not that any of these are better or worse than another one. Each one is going to give you a benefit. And if you want to focus entirely on, well, what skills do I want for my character, you can go that route. Or you can actually create a real background and go, well, this feels more kind of rural, and we had a lot of bureaucracy in our thing, and despite the massive amount of bureaucracy, it was impressively lawless as well. You know, you can kind of mix and match to create this really interesting backstory for your character. Then it goes into languages, not quite Tolkien in the nonsense levels of focus on languages, but still enough there for you to get a good idea. And after the culture, you also have a career, which is going to give you more skills, some languages, and then also a perk. Perks are kind of like feats, but not really. There's an entire chapter on them, so we'll go over them in more detail there. But after you basically talk about your culture, which is where you came from, you have your career, which is what you did right before becoming an adventurer, to just kind of round it out a little bit more. And one of the interesting things about every career is there is an inciting incident. And I'll read their explanation here. Each career has a list of inciting incidents, each of which suggests a potential reason why you gave up your career, turned away from a possibly comfortable and reliable living, and took up the sword, or axe, or wand, to become an adventuring hero. Each inciting incident represents a life-changing event that might have motivated you to change course, becoming a person who risks it all to save others. I love the fact that they... because they do mention it in other Giga games, like, yeah, this is your background, this is what you did before becoming an adventurer. They kind of leave up, well, why did you leave it? Like, why would you stop doing this to become an adventurer? Well, that's how the game is played. Well, no, they give you basically suggestions of this is why you are no longer. Like, good example, the first career they have is called Agent. You worked as a spy for a government or organization. In defining your career, think about the following questions. They give you a bunch of questions. And then for the inciting incident, the first inciting incident, disavowed. While on a dangerous espionage assignment, things went sideways. Although you escaped with your life, the mission was a public failure thanks to bad information your agency gave you. They denied you work for them, and you went on the run. Hero work will let you survive and clear your name. I mean, that's Burn Notice right there. And if you've never watched Burn Notice, you need to, because it's probably one of the greatest action series ever created. Jeffrey Donovan is so good in it, as is Gabrielle, I can't remember her last name, or what's his name? Bruce something. No, I feel stupid. What's his name? Bruce Campbell. God, I love Bruce Campbell. He's so good. So yeah, as you can see, like, they give you an actual reason. Hey, this is why you are no longer an agent or an aristocrat or a criminal or, again, they have a decent amount of careers here for you to choose from. So, yeah, I mean, the whole background thing is, again, hyper customizable. And again, it's not customizable in the way we're giving you a bunch of different choices, but only like 2 of them are ever going to work for you. Every single one of these can be viable, and you can mix every single one of these careers with every single class. There's not going to be, oh, well, if you want to be a censor, you really should choose the warden option because it gives you these benefits and things like that, and that will... No, anything can mix with anything else, and that is the true definition of choice. If the only way that you can make a certain class is you have to choose one of these like 3 races or one of these like 2 backgrounds, otherwise it just won't work, those aren't really choices then. You kind of are forced into picking between a very, very small number of things, and there's always kind of a right answer. There isn't a right answer here. There's just answers, and they're all really cool and interesting. So, yeah. Moving on. Chapter 5. Classes. This is where things get crazy, folks. The classes they have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 classes in the base book. Less than D&D? Oh, this is so horrible. No, trust me on this one. Each class has a number of subclasses built into it, and every single one of them also has a bunch of different abilities that they can choose, which means that even if you have 2 players that choose the same class, the same subclass, they can still choose different abilities and play vastly different, or even just give themselves different kits and play vastly different. The classes are the Censor, Paladin style character, the Conduit, they're your Cleric style character, Elementalist, Wizard, Fury, Barbarian-esque, Null, Monk, Shadow, it's the Rogue, Tactician, Fighter-esque, though closer to like a Battle Master than like your standard D&D fighter. The Talent is a Scion, Psychic Spellcaster, and then Troubadour, Bard. So those are the classes. Again, every single one of them is very, very unique. And inside of each one, there's even more cool stuff. I love the classes in here. I love the class design. I love the lore about them. But before you get to the classes, this is where we start learning about how the game is played. Like, because all of these things are things that you have to deal with, they talk about like distance. This is how distance is measured, or area abilities. This is what an aura is versus a burst versus a cube. And this is where I start having issues with how the game is laid out, because if I need to look up a rule on the fly, there's a bunch of different areas it might be in. And generally, and I've had to do this while I was doing my research for this review, trying to figure out which chapter it's in is nearly impossible. Because, again, we have, like, explanations of how walls work and stuff like that, complete with diagrams, is in the classes section, not the combat section, in the classes section, and they don't tend to reprint things too often. And so what that means is if I have to look something up on the fly, it's going to take me longer because I'm not going to know which section it's in. And I'm not particularly fond of that approach. I understand the reason why you do need to know all of these things in order to understand how the classes work. My recommendation, instead of putting some of the tactical information in the classes section and then some of it in the combat section, maybe just put all of the how to play before the character options, and then you can have all of it in the same area. I know, crazy, right? So because of this, it is kind of a weird book to read and understand. Um, yeah, there's no real sugarcoating this. This was a choice. It was the wrong choice. I think it makes the book more difficult to understand rather than easier to understand. Despite the fact that it does do what I generally want new TTRPG designers to do, which is put the rules first on how to play the game and then introduce character options to us. They kind of went a halfway point of, well, we're just going to put the rules that we think you need to know in order to make a character, and then we'll explain the rest of the rules later. And it just doesn't work. There's also a thing called potency, which I had to reread like a dozen to the times. Effectively, there are certain things that, depending on the enemy's score in that particular attribute, you might get additional effects. And again, it's entirely based on the creature that you're fighting, which does add kind of interesting tactical options. It basically hyper encourages you to learn your enemies. Because there's certain things that if you hit the right potency on it, it gets really, really powerful. And if you're not getting your potency effects, it's just not as useful. Yeah. So like I said, they do explain kind of how the things work in here, but they don't explain it super, super well because they have another chapter later on that actually explains it in greater detail. But then there's certain things that they only list here, and it's just annoying. So then we finally get to the actual classes themselves. And like I've been saying, oh dear God, these are so freaking cool. Like the censor artwork is a blue dragon knight with armored wings wearing this super awesome looking plate mail with a giant kite shield and a mace busting up some tentacled monster thing. It looks so badass. And the censor themselves is a super cool class. Their three subclasses are called orders. You have the Exorcist, the Oracle, and the Paragon. The Exorcist, you specialize in hunting your order's hidden enemies. Blah, blah, blah. The Oracle, corruption has deep tendrils that can't be missed, leading you to specialize in uncovering clandestine threats to your order. Blah, blah. Paragon, without a strong example and a firm hand, the weak will be corrupted. You specialize in setting an example for your order. So, your censor order is going to influence a lot of other things that happen. Like, your kind of defining ability is what I would call it in 5th edition. Your kind of class ability that every single censor has is called judgment. You can mark a creature, and depending on which order you chose, it does different things. And I'm not going to go into absolutely everything here, but it does, like, your choice of order affects a lot of different things that you do going over and over and over again. It's I don't want to get too much into the weeds here because there's a lot. I guess something I will mention, at first level you get 3 different abilities. You get what's called a signature ability, which is basically your at-will abilities from 4th edition. These are things that you can just always do. Then you get what they call heroic abilities that have a cost. The way you pay that cost is through your heroic resource. Every single class has their own heroic resource. They all work in a very similar manner. Wrath is the censor's heroic resource, and effectively, at the start of a combat encounter or some other stressful situation tracked in combat rounds, you gain wrath equal to your victories. At the start of each of your turns during combat, you gain 2 wrath. So you start off, and victories will explain a little bit later, but basically every time you complete an encounter of some sort, whether it's a negotiation, combat encounter, whatever, you get a victory, which is taken almost directly from 4th edition. They called them milestones back then. The more victories you have, the more power you have. There's a lot of abilities that are based on how many victories you have. So the longer you go without rests, the more powerful your character becomes, which is interesting. In addition to just getting 2 wrath at the start of every turn, the first time each combat round that a creature judged by you deals damage to you, you gain a wrath. The first time each combat round that you deal damage to a creature judged by you, you gain wrath. You lose any remaining wrath at the end of the counter. So, your heroic resource for all of these classes is going to interact with your signature abilities in some way, shape, or form, and then you use them to power your abilities, your heroic abilities. So you get to choose 1 3 wrath ability and 1 5 wrath ability at level 1, in addition to your signature ability, which you could just use as many times as you want. So, with like a 3 wrath ability, theoretically, because you get 2 wrath every single round no matter what, and you get 1 wrath if you hit a judgment to target, and you get 1 wrath if you get hit by a judgment target, there's a good chance that you're going to have 4 wrath every single turn, or at least 3 wrath. So you theoretically could use a 3 wrath ability every single time you fight. But to get to the cooler stuff of the 5 wrath abilities, you might want to use one of your signature abilities and save up the wrath until the next turn. And that's kind of how you go with all the classes, is kind of deciding, do I want to use a signature ability? Do I want to use one of my heroic abilities? Do I want to use something from my kits? We'll get to kits in a little bit here. And yeah, it makes for a very interesting thing. And as you level up, you get cooler stuff and more expensive stuff. Like when you get to 6th level, you get to choose 1 of 2 abilities that cost 9 wrath. So they're expecting you to be doing some pretty powerful stuff, and the abilities that you get to choose is based on your order. So yeah, and it gets cooler and cooler. Once you get to 10th level, you become a Templar. And it just gives you a bunch of cool things you can do. Yeah, it changes how the character looks. And then there's some really badass artwork of the Dragon Knight from before, but even cooler looking. And then we go to the Conduit. And again, Conduit is effectively your cleric style character. But if you think they're going to play like a 5th edition cleric, you are sadly mistaken. First of all, your kind of subclass is going to be choosing a deity and domains. And there's a bunch of different domains. And the domains have to be something that your deity is attached to in some way. In addition to that, you have a bunch of other things. Like you have what are called your domain piety and effects, which are just kind of effects and things that go off of your ability. The kind of one of the defining features of the Conduit is you can pray. Basically, piety is your limited resource. And at the start of each of your turns during combat, you gain 1d3 piety. Additionally, you can gain more piety by praying to the gods, but beware, doing so can easily draw their ire, as the gods hate to be annoyed. Before you roll to gain piety at the start of your turn, you can pray, no action required. If you do, the roll gains the following additional effects. And so you have to roll a die and figure out what happens. And if you piss off the gods, bad things happen to you. So it's an interesting kind of egging it on mechanic for clerics. And then when you actually get into uh, your abilities, like your kind of basic healing ability is called Healing Grace. And it takes a maneuver. In combat, you have your main action and you also have a maneuver. It's kind of like an action and bonus action system. And so your Healing Grace maneuver, the target can spend a recovery. Think Healing Surges from 4th edition. But if you burn some piety, other stuff can happen. You can target an additional creature. You can end an effect on the target. Prone target can stand up, or the target can spend an additional recovery. So by burning a little bit of piety, you can also kind of supercharge it. And that's your maneuver. You still have your main action that you can do a bunch of other things. Also, every class has what are called triggered actions, which are basically reactions that they have. So, if I remember correctly, triggered actions you can only do once per round. So one of the triggered actions is called Word of Guidance. Trigger, the target makes an ability roll for a damage dealing ability. Effect, the power roll gains an edge. Spend 1 piety, the power roll has a double edge. So you can just give your allies, as soon as you see they're doing something, you can just go Word of Guidance, now you're doing better. Or you have Word of Judgment. The target would take damage from an ability that uses a power roll. Effect, the power roll takes a bane against the target. Spend a piety, the power roll is double bane. So your triggered action for this class is you can either give your allies edge or give the enemies a bane. And it doesn't, like, there's no limited resource built into that. It's just, this is a triggered action that you can do. So even when you're not playing, because every single class has these triggered actions, every one of them at level 1 gets at least one triggered action. You really do need to be paying attention when the other players are doing things, because you're going to have triggered actions. And at least for the conduit, they're exclusively based on what is happening to your allies, not to you. And then when we get to, like, one of the signature abilities is called Blessed Light. It's a ranged attack, and it does damage, but the effect, in addition to the damage, is one ally within distance gains a number of surges equal to the tier outcome of your power roll. And surges are basically a way that you can up your damage. So you deal damage and buff an ally. Or Drain. You deal damage and you or one ally within distance can spend a recovery. So you do damage and heal in the same action. It's really, like, this was one of the things that made playing a cleric in 4th edition so much fun, because instead of just being heal bots where all they do is they stand back and I heal you, the way that most cleric abilities works is you would use your minor action in 4th edition to do any healing that you have. And you generally could do that twice per encounter. But then you would also have abilities that you would do damage and then also throw a heal someone's way, or also buff an ally, or do stuff like that. It was really fun to play a cleric because you really felt like you were just calling down divine fury and raising your allies at the exact same time. And that's what the conduit does. You can build them to be very much a combat cleric kind of thing, where they're not really focused on doing a ton of healing. But you can also, like, you're always going to have the ability to have Healing Grace. Like, Healing Grace is just built into the character. So if you don't have another use for your maneuver that turn, you can always do that. And then Word of Guidance and Word of Judgment, your triggered actions, you can always use them, and it's not going to hurt you in any way, shape, or form to use them. You're not getting rid of spell slots or anything like that. You just have good shit that you can do. And I just love that. And as the conduit gets bigger and bigger, they just get cooler and cooler shit that they get to do. Like at 3rd level, they get a minor miracle. I won't go into details, but it's as interesting as you think it is. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and cooler and cooler, and the artwork keeps getting more and more badass. It's amazing. So yeah, the Elementalist, it's your caster. The specialization, the Elementalist will specialize in one of the elements, and that will change how you play the game. And the elements you can specialize in are Earth, Fire, Green, which is green is the element of creation and growth. Green abilities make and manipulate plants, fungus, and other forms of life to hamper foes. So, druid type spells. Or void. Void is the element of mystery. Void abilities warp space and reality, allowing you to teleport, create illusions, and make things incorporeal. Um, Again, it is a spellcaster class. Like it's your standard spellcaster class, but there's so many interesting things that happens with it. Their maneuver type of ability is called Practical Magic. It's your prestidigitation style thing. And then your triggered action is based on what your specialization is. So, like the fire triggered action is target. The target force moves a creature or object. Forced movement is a big thing in Draw Steel, so it'll be happening quite often. And so if somebody force moves something, the force movement distance gains a bonus equal to your reason score. So it's called explosive assistance. So your triggered action is an ally tries to move an enemy, you can make it move significantly further. And one of the interesting thing about force movement is if a creature is force moved into something, they take damage based on how much movement they didn't get to use. The more movement that they didn't get to use, the more damage that they take. And if you burn an essence, that's their limited resource. The forced move distance gains a bonus equal to twice your reason score instead. So, by having this triggered action, if you have an ally that does forced movement a lot, you can use this triggered action to really get some crazy pinball nonsense going. And if you can run an enemy into another enemy, they both take damage. It's great, guys. It's super, super cool. And that's just one of the triggered options. Like I said, each different, each of the different specializations has their own triggered action. And then, I'm not going to go into every little thing, but it's just super, super cool. And every single specialization, every single ability just looks really cool and interesting. And when you get to second level, you become a disciple, and like Disciple of the Green, you get animal forms. You go full on druid here. And it's the same class as the wizard. The wizard and the druid are basically combined into one class, and yet it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel weird or anything. Like, it's just super, super cool. The Fury. And again, it's technically kind of the barbarian, but it gets more than that. Your subclass is called a primordial aspect. The three versions are Berserker, Reaver, and Stormwight. I think Stormwight is probably the most different from what you're expecting. You channel your ferocity into primordial storms and can take on the form of an animal or an animal hybrid form. You have the Trax skill. So here's another interesting thing. So kits. We'll get to kits a little bit later, but not every class gets access to kits. Kits are basically like weapons that also have abilities built into them. The Berserker and the Reaver both get access to kits. The Stormwight doesn't, but what they do get is they get special kits called Stormwight kits, which are your animal forms, which is really interesting. So as much as, yes, the Fury is kind of a barbarian, they also take over the kind of moon druid aspect of, if you wanted, battle morphs or whatever they're called, beast forms, you go Stormwight instead of going with Elementalist. And I love that. I think that's really, really amazing. You technically have two different classes that can change into animals, but one of them is very much kind of offense focused and the other one is more utility focused. And both of them are incredibly viable, incredibly cool, interesting things. The triggered actions are, again, based on your subclass for this. Um, and like the Storm White one is called Furious Change. Trigger, you lose stamina and are not dying. Stamina is effectively your hit points. Effect, you gain temporary stamina equal to your might score and can enter your animal form or hybrid form. So just, if you get hit, you can go, that was a mistake. And are instantly, like, that's super cool. And then if you want to burn a ferocity, which is their limited resource, if you are not dying, you can spend a recovery. You can heal yourself as you change into your animal. So yeah, just, oh man. The Fury is massively cool. And again, as much as, yes, it is kind of our barbarian, it's also a little bit of druid, and there's a little bit of everything. Like, these classes are so much more interesting and varied than classes in most other TTRPGs, where they basically just know this is what you do and this is all you do, and we'll give you a few variations on it, but it's this. The fact that your barbarian can turn into a werewolf is just cool. And we get to the Stormright kits, like each one is for example, the Borin Stormright kit. With this Stormright kit, you channel your primordial ferocity into the form of a bear, becoming large, durable, and imposing. Borin are tied to the craggy, rocky north, and this aspect is associated with the blizzard's bitter cold. So you have that. Corvin, you channel your primordial ferocity in the form of a crow. Raiden, you channel your primordial ferocity into a rat. Vukin, you channel your primordial ferocity into the form of a wolf. And each one has benefits and an animal form and a hybrid form. And like, it's just so cool what you can do with this character. So, yeah. The next one is the Null. The Null is not just a monk. It is a psychic monk. The traditions are chronokinetic, cryokinetic, and metakinetic. So very, very kind of Dark Sun-esque, where they talk about like the different disciplines and stuff. The limited resource for them is discipline, and their kind of ability, they have this thing called Null Field, which is the field that you can turn on as a maneuver, but it just stays on, and depending on which you have a couple different effects that can happen if you burn a discipline in it. And yeah, I mean, it's very, very much so. This is a psychic monk. And yeah, it's just cool, guys. What is their triggered ability? Yeah, their triggered ability is Inertial Shield. You take damage is the trigger. Effect, you take half the damage, and if you spend a discipline, the potency of one effect associated with the damage is reduced by 1 for you. Potency is basically how powerful it is. That's what you're rolling for when you roll your d20. It's not if you hit, it's how badly you hit. And so you can burn a discipline to just reduce it down. So effectively, Inertial Shield is what's that stupid rogue ability that I can never remember what it's called, but it basically lets you take less damage as a reaction, which is cool, and I love that. Then there's tons of other stuff, like the Null took me a while to figure out, because it's interesting. The Null doesn't get access to kits because you're a fisty boy, despite the fact that there are kits that allow you to use martial arts and stuff like that, and punches and kicks. The Null does not get to use kicks, which is interesting to say the least. But there, I mean, it's such a cool thing, and the artwork is massively cool. And you can be like a frost monk or a time monk or just a cool monk, and yeah, just super cool shit all around, and it keeps getting cooler. Yeah, and we get to the Shadow. They're a rogue. However, their Shadow College, they have College of Black Ash, Caustic Alchemy, and Harlequin Mask. Black Ash, I just have to read this description. The College of Black Ash founded the art of being a shadow. Its graduates are unmatched in mobility, using sorcery to teleport around the battlefield, manipulate shadows, and summon darkness. You have the magic skill. So, College of Black Ash is my Shadow Monk. Because, again, they do get access to shadows get access to kits. So if I wanted a teleporting punchy dude, I would do a College of Black Ash shadow, and I could recreate my 5th edition Shadow Monk pretty well, and give him more cool bullshit that they could do. And then Caustic Alchemy is exactly what it sounds like: acids, bombs, and poisons. And Harlequin Mask is illusion magic. So you're kind of arcane trickster style thing. Their limited resource is called Insight. And their triggered action is based on their subclass. The Black Ash one is called In All This Confusion. You take damage. The effect, you take half the damage, then can teleport up to 4 squares after the triggering effect resolves. And then if you spend Insight, you can teleport an additional square for each Insight you spent. So, yeah, you can take damage, but I'm going to teleport away, which was a thing that I used to do in 4th edition with my Sword Mage Avenger hybrid. They had an ability where if you took damage, you could just teleport away, which was massively fun to do. So yeah, I mean, just, oh, it's so cool. And it's so much more interesting than just the abilities that you get as a rogue in D&D or anything like that. Because you have so many cool things. Like, one of the 5 insight abilities you can take is called Shadow Strike. Which you use a strike signature ability twice. So basically, you burn 5 insight and you can make 2 attacks. And they are the signature abilities. Again, you're at will, so it allows you to attack twice. And that's just one of the abilities you can take for 5 insight. Another one is called Setup. And if they hit the potency level or whatever it's called, I can't remember what they're called anymore because there's so many fucking words in this game. They get weakness 5. Which basically means anytime they take a certain type of damage, they take 5 extra damage, which is really, really useful. So, yeah, and it just gets cooler and cooler as you go on. Then we get to the Tactician. This is your more traditional fighter. Your subclass is called Doctrine. You had Insurgent, Mastermind, and Vanguard. They're going to feel very familiar. So Insurgent, you do whatever it takes to keep your allies alive. Mastermind, that's your warlord. And then Vanguard is... I think Insurgent is a more defensive one, and then Vanguard's a more offensive one. And yeah, triggered abilities. I think, do you have access to all 3 of them? No, each one has a different triggered ability. But like for the Mastermind, they have Overwatch. Trigger, the target moves. Effect, anytime during the target's movement, one ally can make a free strike against them. And then if you spend a focus, the target has... if the target has less than this amount, they are slowed. So, Overwatch, you can give someone else an attack when you're playing the Tactician. You are giving out attacks as your triggering action. This is just cool. It's super, super cool. Oh, I love it. And then they have a marking ability built into it. Yeah, I love this stuff. It's so good, guys. I can't tell you. Then we get to the talent. This is your psionic. And again, their specialization, like there's different talent traditions. Animopathy, chronopathy, cryokinesis, metamorphosis, pyrokinesis, resopathy, telekinesis, and telepathy. And you get to choose either chronopathy, telekinesis, or telepathy as your kind of focus. The other ones still exist, but they're not your focus. They're limited resources called talent. And what is their triggered action? Again, based on your thing, but one of the triggered actions for the chronopathy one is target triggers. The target makes an ability roll. Effect: you can use this ability after seeing the results of the triggering roll. The target must re-roll the power roll and use the new roll. So this can either be used to make an ally re-roll a miss or a low roll. You can't miss in this. Or make an enemy re-roll a high roll that they did. But it works the same way. And again, there's no limitation to it. It's just a triggered action. You can do it once per round. So again, this is another class that you really should be paying attention when it's not your turn, because you have these triggered actions. I love that so much. It's so cool. And this is another one that doesn't get access to kits because they're more of a caster. They just get cooler and cooler as they get higher. And then the troubadour, it's a bard. The three different flavors of troubadours are Artur. You seek drama from story and recount, using your magic to manipulate the sequence of events unfolding before you. Kind of a more traditional bard. Duelist, sword bard. Virtuoso, singing bard. Their limited resource is called drama. Of course it is. And then they have cool shit that they can do. Again, I have spent far too much time on this chapter alone, so I'm not going to go into more details, but every single class in this is really cool. They have a lot of cool abilities that allow you to do cool things. Not just, oh, it's useful. Every one of these abilities, you feel cool while you're doing it. So, yeah. Moving on. Chapter 6. Kits. This is the other thing that makes things really, really cool. Kits are basically a combination of weapons and armor that have a signature ability built into them. The way that kits work is there are kind of like magic weapons and magic armor and stuff like that in here. But in addition to that, you have these kits that give you bonuses. So, good example. There's an Arcane Archer kit. Every kit is going to tell you what you're allowed to use and what you're not allowed to use while using that kit. So equipment, you wear no armor and wield a bow. So you can't wear armor, but you get to wear the bow. Well, if I can't wear armor, I'm going to be, that's going to put me at a disadvantage. Well, not really, because you get kit bonuses. You get a bonus to your speed. You get range damage bonuses. You get a range distance bonus. And a disengage bonus. Basically, disengage, if you're familiar with 3rd edition, they used to call it 5-foot step. In 4th edition, it was a shift. It's basically a way for you to move out of melee range without triggering an opportunity attack. When you have a disengage bonus, it means instead of moving 1 square, you can move 2 squares as part of that shifting maneuver, which they call it disengage. So this is kind of a hyper-mobile kind of character, and their signature ability is called Exploding Arrow. And so it does damage, and the effect, one creature or object of your choice within 2 squares of the target takes fire damage equal to the characteristic score used for this ability's power roll. So you shoot an arrow, it explodes, and hits one other dude. That's super cool. At the same time, there's a martial artist kit. The equipment, you wear no armor and wield only your unarmed strikes. But the bonuses you get stamina bonus. You get +3 stamina per echelon. So echelon 1, you get 3. Echelon 2, you get 6. You get a speed bonus of +3, hypermobile, melee damage bonus, and a disengage bonus. And then your signature ability is called Battle Grace. Which when you roll high, you can swap places with the target. And if you obtain a tier 2 or tier 3 outcome, and can't swap places with the target because one or both of you is too big to fit in the swap space, you both remain in your original space, but the target takes 1 extra damage. So the martial artist is designed to be a little bit more mobile, whereas the pugilist also wears no armor and wields only unarmed strikes, but they get a bigger stamina bonus, a smaller speed bonus. They get a stability bonus, which is basically your stability is if someone tries to move you, you can cancel a number of squares of movement equal to your stability. So pugilists are harder to move, and they get a smaller melee damage bonus, but their signature ability, Let's Dance. When you roll higher, you can slide the target, which is directional movement or non-directional movement. There's a bunch of different types of movements in here. You can push targets, you can pull targets. Push has to be away from you, pull has to be towards you. Slide lets you just move in any direction you want. And then the effect, you can shift into any square the target leaves after you slide them. So, cool stuff that they're there. This allows you to kind of move targets around any way that you want. And there's quite a few different kits, and I will guarantee they will keep adding more and more. Like there's a spell sword kit, and a stick and robe kit, and a whirlwind kit, which is the only kit with a whip, and they need more whip kits. So yeah, overall, it's really, really interesting. The kit system in and of itself is really, really cool, because if you can use kits, you can just use kits. Like there isn't like, you can use these kits. Like if you want to build a sensor, you can build a sensor that uses the martial arts kit and be a punchy paladin. Or you can build a shadow that uses the Guisarmier, which is basically, if anyone doesn't know, there's a pole weapon called a Guisarm. It's kind of like a glaive. Yeah, this is an entire kit where you wear medium armor and wield a polearm as a shadow. What was the other one that's just really, really... Like, shining armor is one of the kits. You wear heavy armor and wield a shield and a medium weapon. So you can be a sword and board rogue. And it's completely viable. It's not going to be like, well, this doesn't really fit with you. Nope, you can make it work, and you can be a super cool... I mean, you effectively make like a Shadow Knight out of that, or like a Death Knight style character, which is super, super cool. Like, it just keeps getting cooler and cooler and cooler. And so, yeah, kits are just fucking awesome. Moving on. Chapter 7. Perks. Perks are effectively kind of like feats that you would see in other TTRPGs. However, they're almost exclusively skill-based. And what I mean by that is there are 6 types of perks. You have crafting perks, exploration perks, interpersonal perks, intrigue perks, lore perks, and supernatural perks. Each one kind of widens what you can do. Like, for example, one of the exploration perks, the first one, is called Brawny. Whenever you fail a might test, you can lose stamina equal to 1d6 plus your level to improve the outcome of the test by 1 tier. You can use this perk only once per rest. Another one in the exploration perk is called Friend Catapult. As a maneuver, you grab a willing or adjacent ally or object of your size or smaller, then vertically push the target up to a number of squares equal to twice your might score. If a creature you push falls as a result of this movement, the effective distance of the fall is reduced by a number of squares equal to twice your might score. When you use this perk, you can't use it again until you earn 1 or more victories. So you can basically, using this exploration perk, you can throw people really, really well. Because again, each square is roughly 5 feet. So if you have a might score of 3, you can throw someone vertically upwards 15 feet. That's a lot. So, yeah. So they are kind of designed to be a little bit more kind of skill / role-playing focused. Though, again, with Friend Catapult, you 100% could use that in combat as well to do like a fastball special kind of thing. The only ones that get a little bit weird are supernatural perks, which are things like Arcane Trick or Familiar. If you want to have a Familiar, you can get one of those. Invisible Force, Telekinesis, stuff like that. So, yeah, like it's we'll get to more about it when we actually get to this section that talks about tests and we actually talk about the skills. But having a perk does not mean that you are the only person that can do anything like that. It just lets you do things easier, or lets you do things in a different way. But anyone can kind of try to do a lot of different things. And the perk system, like again, if you compare it to like the feat system in 5th edition, where feats are designed to massively change how you play your character, that's not what these are. These are more kind of specializations than character changing things that you choose. So, yeah. Moving on. Chapter 8. Complications. I love shit like this. Basically, what a complication is as you're building your character, you can decide with the director's approval to give your character a complication. And basically what it does is it gives you a benefit and a drawback. For example, one of the complications is anti-hero. You used to be a villain. You're mostly reformed now. But in desperate moments, you sometimes draw on the rage and hatred that fueled your own life. In those moments, even your friends aren't sure whose side you're on. They don't need to worry, though. Once you leave evil behind, you can't go back. You've made too many enemies on the other side. The benefit, you have 3 anti-hero tokens. Whenever you use an ability or other effect that costs your heroic resource, you can spend 1 anti-hero token in place of 1 heroic resource. Whenever you have fewer than 3 anti-hero tokens and you would earn a hero token from your party through deeds, you instead regain 1 anti-hero token. But the drawback, while you have fewer than 3 anti-hero tokens, you exude a villainous aspect. You and each ally within 5 squares of you take a bane on any test made to interact with other creatures. So, benefit, you effectively get extra limited resources for your class. Drawback, whenever you have less than you started with, everyone can kind of tell you're starting to tap into your dark side. It makes everybody feel bad. And there are a remarkable number of these complications. Things like animal form, or the chosen one, or elemental inside, famous relative, infernal contract. There's actually 2. There's infernal contract and then infernal contract, but like bad. And I love that there's 2 different versions. There's a hunted complication. There's one that says getting too old for this. I mean, they're really, really interesting, and they add an additional kind of level of uniqueness to your character. Were I running a draw steel game, I would almost insist that all my players have to take a complication, because I think it just makes for a more interesting character. The thing that makes characters interesting is not the things that they do well, it's the things that they do poorly. It's the things that they struggle with, because that's what creates tension. And all of storytelling is built on the idea of creating tension and then releasing that tension in some way, shape, or form. And so having something built into your character that automatically creates tension is automatically going to create more interesting stories if you allow it. You could also completely screw your character up if you've put too much of a focus on this. You try to like min-max your character by choosing the exact right complication to give you the perfect... That's not going to be fun. But if you treat it the way it's designed to be treated, it can do super, super cool stuff. So, yeah, there's tons of them. moving on. Chapter 9. Tests. This is another thing that slightly annoys me, is tests is effectively the how to play chapter. This explains the main mechanic of this is how things work in this game. And it talks about the various difficulties and what to do with different tests, and the fact that you crit on 19 or 20. What to do with failure, success with a consequence, success with a reward. So the different degrees of success or failure, which I always enjoy. Yeah, like this is just your kind of, this is how the game works. And then we have the skills section. So the way that skills work in this game is if you have a skill, you get a +2 to the test. And that's it. Now, if you have an edge, which I'm going to go back here just to remember where they specifically explain what an edge is. It's on page 5. So, an edge, when you get an edge, you get a +2 bonus to the roll. If you make a power roll with 2 or more edges, you have double edge. With a double edge, you don't add anything to the power roll, but the outcome of the roll automatically improves 1 tier. Anytime you make a test, you'll have a tier 1 effect, a tier 2 effect, and a tier 3 effect. So if you get a double edge, all that means is whatever you roll, increase the tier by 1. So when we get to skills, you can have a +2 from your skill, and then if you get an edge, you can get a +2 from your edge. And that's it. And so skills are nice. They're going to give you a +2, but they're not like D&D or Pathfinder or most other systems where the higher you get, the more valuable it is to have certain skills, because eventually you're getting like a +17 to that skill, and so you can make checks that are literally impossible for anyone else to make because it's so high. Nope, it's just a +2, and that's all it ever gets. And the skills themselves, again, they're grouped into different groups. You have crafting skills, exploration skills, interpersonal skills, intrigue skills, and lore skills. And I'm not going to go through every skill, but to give you an idea, like intrigue skills, these are things that are very, very commonly used in most TTRPGs if you're playing a more secretive character. Intrigue skills are alertness, conceal object, disguise, eavesdrop, escape artist, hide, picklock, pickpocket, sabotage, search, sneak, track. That's a lot of different things that are all built under intrigue. And this is one of the things that gave me pause when I first started looking into this, because I'm like, I generally do not like TTRPGs that have super long skill lists, because basically what that means, the more skills that exist, the less your character is able to do in most systems. Because what that means is you have to spend some sort of limited resource to make yourself good at something. And the more skills you there are, the less things that you can be good at. Like in D&D 5th edition, you have sleight of hand. Sleight of hand is used to pick locks, pickpockets, disable to traps, like it is a kind of jack of all trades if you're doing something sneaky. In this, you have conceal objects, picklock, pickpocket, and sabotage. 4 different skills that would all be covered by one skill in D&D. So theoretically, if these skills work the same thing as like D&D skills, then if you wanted to be able to do all the different things that rogues do super, super well, you would have to find a way to get 4 different skills, and that means you can't take 4 other skills. So I generally don't like things like that, because all it does is it makes you hyper focused on, I can only do these very few things. It was one of the biggest problems with the 3rd edition, was the skill system. Once you got to higher levels, it was just impossible to do things that you weren't trained in, because the DCs were just far too high. Yeah, with this, because it's only just a +2, it's not that big a deal if you don't have a skill. If you do have a skill, it's going to be useful. +2 is still going to be beneficial, but there's never going to be a situation where if you didn't train in the skill, it's just physically impossible for you to ever do it. So effectively, skills are not just, things that you can do like they are in some TTRPGs. These are the things that you're just particularly good at. You can do a lot of different things, but these are the things that you specialize in. And I like that. I think that's cool. And then we keep going more into all the different things that you can do. They talk about hiding and sneaking. Then they have group tests and what are called montage tests. A montage test is a skills challenge from 4th edition. Like it's almost identical. Basically, a montage test is designed to be something that takes a long time, and so it takes a montage to kind of see it. Basically, you kind of go around and everybody does their own skill. And the rules in there is you can't use the same skill twice because theoretically you've already done as much as you can as that character, which is taken again directly from 4th edition. And there's more complexities to it, but this was one of the things that I loved about 4th edition. Skills challenges were by far one of the most fun things because it basically, by using skills challenges, you could create these really interesting encounters that could be a part of combat, but they could be a part of anything, and they just became more interesting, and they allowed the players to interact with the world in different ways. So, yeah, I love stuff like that. Yeah. Moving on. Chapter 10. Combat. Combat. It's exactly what it sounds like. Talks about taking turns. It defines the action economy. So, this is Draw Steel uses what I refer to as a 3-action economy. You have a main action, a maneuver, and a move action. So it's effectively the same system that is used in 5th edition, where you have an action, a bonus action, and a move. This, they call it a main action, a maneuver, and a move action. But it's that standard 3-action economy. They talk about triggered actions and free actions, and I can only use 1 triggered action per round effectively. Movement. They talk about size and how that stuff. It gets very, very technical, and I don't want to go through all of it. There's lots of pictures and diagrams to talk about how things work and how the different forced movement and heights and vertical movement and all this other stuff. They have some default actions that you can do. So, like, for your move action, you can advance, you can disengage, you can ride if there's a creature that you can mount. For maneuvers, you have 8 action. Catch a breath is your heal movie. Let's try this again. It's your heal ability. So you can heal in combat, meaning even if you don't have a quote-unquote healer, you can still heal. Escape, grab, and knock back and hide are your kind of maneuvers. Then you also, there's lots of stuff. And then main actions, again, a bunch of different things that you can do as your main action if you're not using one of your abilities. They talk about flanking, cover, damage types, so immunity and weakness and stuff like that. Your stamina, which is, again, your hit points, the recoveries and recovery value and all that other stuff. Dying, mounted combat, stuff like that. And the different ways. Here's another thing that's kind of useful is the idea of how combat ends. And it specifically talks about, okay, not all combat has to just be, all the bad guys are dead. And so they give a bunch of different ones, like diminishing numbers, defeat a specific enemy, get the thing, save another escort. So they introduce the idea of, yeah, you don't actually have to just use, combat is not built around the idea of who can deplete the other side's hit points faster. There's other stuff that you can do. So, yeah. Moving on. Chapter 11. Negotiation. So these are effectively role-playing encounters, but there's a little bit more structure to them. So in a negotiation, this is basically anytime you're trying to get something from another character, but they have stats effectively. You have the interest and the patience of the character that you're dealing with, which is basically how interested they are in you and how patient they are when you do things that they don't like. If an NPC's patience reaches 0, the NPC makes a final offer, negotiation ends. If the NPC's interest drops to 0, they end the negotiation without offering the heroes any deal. So patience is how long am I willing to endure this? Interest is the idea of, do I even want to deal with this? And their patience and interest is going to be affected by what you do. But the other aspects is they have motivations and pitfalls. And the interesting about that is motivations are things that they like. If you appeal to one of their motivations, it's going to be easier for you to win. Pitfalls are things that they don't like. If you appeal to one of their pitfalls, things are going to go very poorly for you in that negotiation. And the list of motivations and pitfalls are the same list. It's not like greed can be a motivation or a pitfall. Justice can be a motivation or a pitfall. And while you're talking with the NPC, you can start to kind of get an idea of what they might be motivated with and what they might be a pitfall. Or you can just learn as you're negotiating when you accidentally hit a pitfall and bad things happen. This system in and of itself is so interesting because, again, it's designed to be hyper customizable so that you can just kind of build things on the fly. But there's enough rules and there's enough structure here that you don't feel like you're just grasping at random things in the air. You just go, okay, this is the NPC you're talking about. Let's say he starts with an interest of 3 because what you guys have said has been interesting, and he's a very patient person. So we'll call his patience 4. And I'm just going to give him the motivation of discovery. He's all about learning new things. However, he is very, very much offended with the idea of doing something specifically for monetary gain. There are a lot of people that the reason they discover new things is they can find a way to monetize it. And so the pitfall for him is greed, but his motivation is discovery. Like, in just a couple seconds, I have an entire framework to work within for the players to kind of negotiate and do things. And once they hit one of those two things, it helps me to figure out whether the interest should rise or fall, whether the patience should rise or fall, and how the negotiation goes. It's a fantastic system. Probably one of the more robust role-playing systems that I've seen. And it's described generically enough where basically the whole point of a negotiation is you're trying to get something from someone else. So that could be you're negotiating price or something like that. It could also be you're just trying to get someone to let you through. You're trying to get someone to join, join your boy band, like whatever it is. Anytime you are trying to get some sort of benefit from an NPC, you use the negotiation system. And I love it when they have these kind of broadly defined systems for resolving conflicts that can be used in a lot of different situations. I think Modifius probably has the best conflict resolution system that I've seen in Dune Adventures in the Imperium, because they have one resolution system for literally everything, and it works well for everything. Combat, same system. Negotiation, same system. Two armies going at each other, same system. Trying to pick someone's pocket, same system. It's really cool and really interesting. This isn't quite that robust, but it's still a fantastic system. And they even talk about things like stop combat, start negotiation, and stuff like that. How to make arguments and responses and other things. Like, it's just, it's good. Like, there's really no other way to explain it. And then they also have an example negotiation. It's, oh man, it's so good. Moving on. Chapter 12. Downtime Projects. This is something that I'm seeing more and more often in TTRPGs just in general, is the idea of, well, what if my character wants to do something else? What if my character wants to... What if we want to build our own keep? What if I want to open my own business or something like that? You have these downtime projects, and again, there's a robust enough system that you can, like, they have example projects, and I'm going to look. So, some example projects. One of the example projects, build an airship. Project goal 3,000. Basically, every time you roll, you will add that amount to the project goal with a few modifiers and things like that. So, building an airship is going to take a lot of time. Whereas, another thing you can do is imbue armor. The project goal for that is 150, and this is basically how you can craft your own magic armor and things like that, or magic weapons and stuff like that. So yeah, cool, interesting stuff that can happen in between adventures. And there, again, there's a tons of different things. Like, one of the things is called discover lore. If your character wants to, continue researching about something that might become useful later on. Yeah, I mean, just tons and tons and tons of cool stuff. Go Undercover is another project. Community service is another project. Learn a new language, learn a new skill. Another downtime project. Lots of cool stuff that you can do. So, yeah, moving on. Chapter 13. Rewards. This is your magic items place. So they have things like, they separate them by echelons. So they have like consumables. First echelon consumables are things like Black Ash Dart. Which the effect for a Black Ash Dart is, as a maneuver, you make a ranged free strike using a Black Ash Dart. The strike deals an extra 1 damage and adds the following effect to the tier outcomes of your power roll. Tier 1, you can teleport the target up to 2 squares. 2 is 4. 3 is 6. So, Black Ash Dart, you get to use your free ranged attack, which is already defined, but you add 1 additional damage and then you teleport the target. That is such an interesting thing, as far as a cool consumable item. And because it's a teleport, you just get to move them wherever you want. So if you wanted to teleport the target off a cliff, you could. Like, that's super, super interesting. And it goes on. And they have kind of the standard, like, one of the Echelon 1 things is a healing potion. And that's, when you drink this potion as a maneuver, you regain stamina equal to your recovery value without spending a recovery. Super simple. So, yeah. In addition to consumables, they also have trinkets. Like, one of the trinkets is a blue color cloak. While worn, a blue color cloak grants you cold immunity equal to your level. Additionally, when you're targeted by any effect that deals cold damage, you can use a triggered action to shift a number of squares equal to your level. If you do so, the cold immunity granted by the cloak becomes cold weakness with the same value until the end of the next round. You can't use this triggered action again until the weakness ends. So it's a cloak that you can use that gives you cold immunity, but if you're willing to give up that immunity, it gives you extra movement as a reaction. So cool stuff like that. And there's other stuff like Key of Inquiry. As a maneuver, you touch the key to an adjacent willing, grabbed, or restrained creature and twist the key 90 degrees clockwise. The creature must answer the next 3 questions they are asked truthfully and fully. If twisted 90 degrees counterclockwise instead, the creature forgets the last 30 minutes they experienced. A creature affected by the key can't be affected again by any key of inquiry for 1 year. If the key is ever destroyed, all the memories it has erased are restored. Memories erased by the key can't be restored in any other way. So this is a massively cool tier 2 trinket. Or, second echelon trinket. Basically, one way, it's a zone of truth kind of spell. Turn it the other way, it's a memory wipe spell. Massively useful. And it's not a consumable. This is something that you can just use. It's just you can't use it on the same person more than once a year. Which is just cool. Like, it's just amazing. And all these things do have project goals as well, if your characters want to use a project to kind of either create it or find it or something like that. So these can be things that the players go, I want this. And go, okay, well, you can use it as your character can try and find this as a downtime project. So I love stuff like that. It's just so cool. And then they have things called leveled treasures, which basically, as you gain higher levels, the things get more powerful, which are cool. So, yeah. Then they introduce titles. Titles are things that technically the GM can kind of reward you with by doing certain things. And once you have a title, it gives you benefits, like the Brawler title. The prerequisite for the Brawler title is you have to triumph in battle without killing any of your foes. The effect is you choose one of the following benefits. Duck. When an enemy strikes you while a second creature is flanking you, you can use a triggered action to redirect the strike against the second creature. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you earn 1 or more victories. Furniture Fighter. When you use a weapon ability with an improvised weapon or a weapon that isn't part of your kit, the ability benefits from your kit's melee weapon damage bonus. Headbutt. While you're grabbed or restrained, your free strikes don't take a bane when those conditions would impose one, and then if I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Whenever you defeat foes without killing any of them, including the foes you defeat to meet the prerequisites for this, you gain an edge on tests during negotiations with those foes. So the reason that these titles have multiple things is if somebody earns like the Brawler title, you triumph in battle without killing any of your foes, well, the whole team is probably going to qualify for that. And so by giving them multiple effects, each one of you can get the title, but everyone can have a different thing from that to the title to give you that benefit. If I remember correctly, you can have multiple titles and stuff like that, but it's kind of up to the director to decide when you qualify for a title, when you don't qualify for a title, things like that. But again, it's another way for the director to be able to reward their players for doing cool, interesting things. And because they're in the book, players can try to earn titles themselves by going, I really want the Brawler title. I think that would be really, really cool. And so they intentionally will fight a battle without actually killing any of their foes. That's a thing that can happen. Or it can just be something that happens while you're going and the director goes, oh, this actually fits really well. You guys all got the Doomed title. So, yeah, and there's some cool titles. Like there's a Mage Hunter title. There's a local hero title. And they have echelons as well. So those were first echelon titles. Second echelon title, things like Arena Fighter, Blood Magic, Corsair. When we get to third echelon titles, you get things like Dragon Blooded, Master Crafter. And then fourth echelon things are things like Demigod or Tireless or Peacebringer. So cool stuff there. They have a renown system that does followers. We're not going to get into that, but it's a thing. There's a wealth system. Yeah. Moving on. Chapter 14. Gods and Religion. This is a much more lore-focused chapter that basically kind of gives you an idea of the major deities and the domains that they have, and then these saints that I'm not as clear on. Like, I've skimmed through this, but it's a long book. I haven't read everything. So I'm not sure if, like, saints can be things that you choose as a conduit or censor, or you have to choose a deity, and then there's a... It's a lot of lore stuff, and talking about how religion works in the default campaign setting for Draw Steel. It is very interesting and cool, and there's just shit tons of stuff here, and a bunch of stained glass window pictures. So... yeah. Moving on. Chapter 15. For the Director. And again, this is the kind of DM advice that gives you, again, a lot of really, really good advice on how to design a campaign, how to motivate your players, how to design interesting villains. Like, it's just... over and over and over again, good advice for running Draw Steel games and just games in general. And yeah, there's things on how to create NPCs and adventure outlines and how to create scenes and how to create combat and stuff like that. They don't have, like, the formulas or anything you do to create combat, because there is a second book called Draw Steel Monsters that has all the rules that you need for combat and stuff. This is, again, technically designed just to teach you how to play the game. Draw Steel Monsters is effectively essential. I don't believe there's almost any monsters. I don't think there's actually any monster stat blocks in this book. They're all in Draw Steel Monsters. So if you are running this as a director, you're going to have to pick up Draw Steel Monsters. Because, again, the game is about killing monsters. You need them. Yeah. There's, again, and they have things like creating and running hazards for more interesting stuff like that. Negotiations and how to do those. They have sample negotiators. So, like, a good example. Bandit Chief, his impression score is 1. His motivations are freedom, greed, power, and revelry. His pitfalls are higher authority, justice, legacy, and peace. And it gives a little example of how they interact with that. So, yeah. Useful stuff there. They have a whole thing on creating and running montage tests. And some examples, things like infiltrate the palace, fight fire, track the fugitive, a wilderness race, stuff like that. Yeah, and then it goes into, like, running a campaign, stuff like that. Moving on to final thoughts. So this book is amazing. I genuinely, absolutely adore everything about it. The customizable ancestries, the backgrounds being something that you can just completely create for your specific character. The classes having so many different things that allow them to do cool stuff and allow them to be different than everyone else, and just everything about this is just the kind of game that I love, that I fell in love with. Like, the reason that I loved, that I got so into D&D was I watched Acquisitions Incorporated, and the first 2 live sessions that they did, they played 4th edition. And it was so cool to see the cool stuff that these guys did with their powers, and I thought it was so amazing. And then I started actually playing 4th edition D&D and using the character builder and all that, and I was just blown away with how many interesting, unique characters I could make over and over and over again, and all the cool shit that you could do with it. And all the different powers that let you do different things, and it felt so amazing, and this brings that back. I was really hesitant to move to 5th edition because it felt so much smaller. Like, especially early 5th edition, like a fighter was a fighter was a fighter was a fighter. Other than the Battle Master getting a little bit different, but you could only do that like a couple times per short rest. It didn't feel like the fighter from 4th edition where every single turn you would do something interesting that nobody else could do. So yeah, this brings back so many of those memories of just these characters that felt like they were completely unique. And if I was going to be doing something, no one else could do anything like it. And I would build these characters with the idea of, yeah, it's going to be super cool and interesting. Yeah. And then the rest of the game, again, the rest of the game is relatively solid. As of right now, I'm planning on using Draw Steel for my December campaign. That's how much I like this. I just think it's phenomenally interesting and fun. So, yeah. Unfortunately, or fortunately maybe, that is going to be all for me today. As always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super, super important. In the comments down below, what are your guys' thoughts? Do you like the ideas that you've seen here? And do you have a particular class or ancestry you're like, oh my God, I gotta make me one of those? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.